Back to the audio sound bites this morning on CNN. Live coverage of the Navy Yard shootings. Carol Costello, the info babe at CNN, is speaking with the correspondent, Brian Todd, about the shootings, and if you can believe it, said this.
I used to work in Washington, live in Washington. It seems so unusual to me that a gunman could create this kind of havoc at a U.S. military facility. This is so unusual because this is such a heavily secured military facility. I worked in Washington for many years. I'd never heard of such a thing happening.
You heard that right. Carol Costello, lead anchorette infobabe in the morning for CNN, just can't believe that something like this, a random shooting, could happen at a military installation. She can't recall it ever happening. You ever heard of Fort Hood, Carol? Do you know what happened at Fort Hood, Carol? Yes, Mr. Limbaugh, I do. That was workplace violence. Oh, that was not a shooting and havoc, a gunman at a military facility? How many people died at Fort Hood? How many people were injured at Fort Hood while the perpetrator was shouting Allahu Akbar while pulling the trigger? She doesn't remember that? So after Costello says that she's never heard of a shooting on a military installation before, the CNN correspondent Brian Todd weighed in.
Well, we haven't either in this area, Carol. This is the first time we've seen something like this, at least in many, many years now. Of course, you remember the Fort Hood shooting in 2009, where that was a member of the service who was convicted eventually of doing that shooting.
That's called, I'm going to try to bail my anchor out here while telling her, oh, she's right. Of course, Carol, you're right in this area, Carol. But, of course, we all remember, and you remember, Fort Hood. CNN.